Over the past year of living in Orlando, I've visited Disney World well over 100 times. And now that I've gotten so familiar with the parks, I thought it'd be interesting to actually try out Disneyland. Now, I actually had been to Disneyland before, but it's been almost 2 decades since then, so I barely remember anything about it. So I thought now would be a good time to compare them. Now, when I say that I don't really remember anything from Disneyland, there's basically only 2 things I do remember. It was Tower of Terror and California Screamin', neither of which are in Disneyland, and neither of which are the same thing today. So the first thing I noticed when pulling into Anaheim is actually the weather, because I didn't feel the need to be chugging water and seeking shade every 5 minutes, and I could actually wear a jacket at night in July, which is very bizarre. Now I have to start off with a few critiques about Disneyland Resort as a whole. Number 1 being the parking situation. Now lucky for me, I was staying at a hotel where I could just walk to the park. Luckily I didn't have to deal with that, but what I did have to deal with was the security system here. Now at every Florida park, it is very simple to just walk right through security. They've got those like weapon detectors where you walk right through and it only beeps if it thinks that you have something bad in your bag, and then those few people will be taken to the side for a bag check. But in California, every bag needs to be checked for some reason, meaning the lines move extremely slow. So every person with a backpack has to take it off. They've got to go through every compartment. I don't know why the security is so much tighter here. Maybe it's got something to do with all the crackheads walking around the streets of Anaheim. Anyway, so on my trip I had 2 days at the resort. I just had 1 day at California Adventure and then 1 day at Disneyland. So I didn't get park hopper. So on our first day we walk into California Adventure, and it felt very similar to walking into Hollywood Studios. You know, there's a lot of the same like Hollywood theming with like all these sound stages and show buildings. But at rope drop, we are following the crowds to what used to be Tower of Terror, which now has a very strange re-theme to Guardians of the Galaxy. And after now trying the Guardians version, I gotta say I really prefer the Tower of Terror version, which I'm glad we still have Tower of Terror in Florida. Anyways, moving on to Avengers Campus, and I was kinda shocked to see just how little is going on here. You know, for being probably Disney's largest IP, I can't believe just how sad this land is as a whole. Like, the Web Slingers ride was kind of silly, and I just think it's so funny that over in Florida, the Avengers Campus is technically at Universal, and Universal did a far better job with it. But then moving over to Cars Land, Radiator Springs is really the highlight of this land, and it's kind of funny that I experienced Test Track and Radiator Springs both for the first time, like less than a month apart, but I do think that Radiator Springs is quite a bit better than Test Track. Now, one thing I have to give California Adventure a point over Hollywood Studios is that the park does seem a little bit better themed overall. There's some really great water areas, and the whole Pixar Pier area looks really nice. I was able to get 3 rides on Incredicoaster, which, like I said, the last time I'd done it was California Screamin'. And I mean, the theming just seems kind of pointless. Like, they just felt like they had to slap an IP onto it. I mean, it didn't really make the ride any better, but at least it didn't make it worse. Then I did the Little Mermaid, which felt basically identical to the Disney World version. And then we did the Grizzly River Run, which actually was not a bad ride. See, I generally enjoy water rides. I'm just always terrified of getting wet socks, because once that happens, the rest of the day is just not going to go well. But luckily this ride does not get you super wet. We also stayed long enough to watch the nighttime show at California Adventure, and it felt very similar to Cinesational at Universal Studios Orlando, where there's not really a big fireworks show, it's mostly just fountains and projections. California Adventure is kind of a weird park in that it seems like there's got to be like some park planners in a back room somewhere that's like, all right, we've got some really great ride ideas, let's put them in like our Asian parks or something. So all of the ideas we've got that are just really gimmicky and kind of lame, we'll just throw those in California Adventure, which is how you get like Web Slingers and some of the weird flat rides in Cars Land. Now I will say that California Adventure kind of has a similar problem to Hollywood Studios in that it feels like it's very top heavy, where there's like not enough rides, and the few good rides don't really have that high of a capacity, so the lines just get impossibly long everywhere. And so it became pretty difficult at certain times of the day where it was like everywhere in the park just had a 1-hour wait. But luckily we were able to do just about everything we were aiming for here. Now right outside the park you've got the whole downtown Disney area, which I have to say, after being so used to Disney Springs, downtown Disney feels like a major disappointment. There is not a lot of selection when it comes to looking for somewhere to eat or even just shopping in general. But now moving over to Disneyland, experiencing it on Disneyland's 70th birthday, which if you're trying to experience all the rides might have not been the best time to go when you see just how massive the crowds were trying to get in the morning. So we show up right around opening time, about 8 o'clock, and the line to get into Disneyland is stretching all the way to California Adventure. So it took about 20 minutes just to get through the gate. Luckily we were able to get the special 70th birthday button, as well as like a special guide map for the day. But walking into this park was something that I was really looking forward to, because I'm so used to Magic Kingdom, and so I knew it was going to feel pretty weird. So just walking down Main Street, it seems very familiar, but the buildings don't seem quite as tall, and they just seem a little bit different. Like, you ever have a dream where you're in a place that you've been lots of times, except that your brain doesn't really design it the way that it's supposed to look? It's a little bit off. Like, that's how I felt when walking into Disneyland. So I'm walking down Main Street, and then I see this tiny little castle at the end. And also the center plaza just feels very small and cramped. Like, where are the firework crowds even supposed to stand at night? And then also, what the heck is Astro Orbiter doing on the ground in the middle of the park? So something I quickly noticed is that Disneyland feels a lot more cramped. Like, Magic Kingdom has much wider open pathways and much bigger attractions, whereas Disneyland is a lot more smaller scale, very smaller pathways. And if you look it up, Disneyland actually has quite a lot more attractions than Magic Kingdom, but on average they are just a lot smaller. So the first place we go is straight through the castle to Fantasyland. And I will say that Fantasyland here feels much smaller than at Magic Kingdom, but I actually like it quite a bit more, as you have a whole bunch of these mini dark rides, like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and Alice in Wonderland and Snow White and Pinocchio. All of these rides are very similar, and I'm really surprised that we have almost nothing like these, not just at Magic Kingdom, but pretty much anywhere in Florida. I guess the Florida parks came a lot later, so the designers are more in the mindset of everything has to be bigger and better, and so they never build these just mini attractions anymore. But I just love the vibes of these mini dark rides where there's just a lot of props and animatronics, but it's all practical effects. And then you move over into Toontown, and I gotta say, Toontown is so much better than Storybook Circus. And from what I heard, Storybook Circus used to be Toontown, so I can't think of a bigger downgrade they could have gone with. Like the Roger Rabbit ride is another great example of those mini dark rides. And then I got on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and that felt really trippy. I mean, the queue spaces is very different, but once we got to the station, I was just like, did we just transport to Florida all of a sudden? Like, when you walk into a place that is completely identical to another place that you've been before, is just a very odd experience. Now, if we head over to another corner of the park, you get Galaxy's Edge, in which I spent very little time here because I was like, we have Galaxy's Edge at home. There's really no need to wait an hour in line to go on Rise of the Resistance. It's actually kind of weird to me that they put the Star Wars land in Disneyland. It feels really out of place in this park. It seems like this would have fit a lot better in California Adventure. But then heading over to Frontierland and all the other parts of that area, it was kind of funny to be like, you know, just a few weeks ago, I got my very last rides on that riverboat and the Tom Sawyer Island. And now here I am, seeing it completely open and running right in front of me. I didn't actually do any of this stuff on the river, but I was also kind of shocked at just how much is going on. Like, you got a whole pirate ship and the riverboat and the kayaks, and then also the rafts that take you to the island. So I mean, they definitely do a lot with their river over there. And it was also kind of crazy to be able to walk all the way around the river, whereas Magic Kingdom just kind of has nothing going on that whole corner of the park. So as a whole, like I was saying, Disneyland feels like it's a bit more cramped than Magic Kingdom, like with smaller pathways and just more stuff going on. But I think that that actually makes the theming better too, because when the pathways are too wide open, it feels a lot harder to be immersed in everything around you. Because immersion is not just what you're walking past, it's also what is over your head. And when you're on a much narrower pathway, it's easier for things to tower up over you. So overall, I do like the theming better at Disneyland. But I also noticed that the layout of Disneyland felt a little bit harder to get around. How if you're on the other side of that island, it's gonna take you a long time to walk to the other side of the park. Whereas at Magic Kingdom, I feel like I could go from any end of the park to another spot, and it never seems to take very long to get around. So far I've said that Fantasyland and Toontown and Frontierland are better at Disneyland. But then we head over to the other side of the park where we have Tomorrowland, and that's where this park kind of lacks. I mean, Space Mountain is very good on both coasts for very different reasons, and so I'd say it's debatable on which one of those is better. But what's not so debatable is that Disneyland's People Mover is completely defunct, and they're also missing Tron. But then right next to that you have the Matterhorn bobsled, which I was not able to ride because it was down for refurbishment. It's kind of crazy to me that on Disneyland's big birthday celebration, where they are going to have tons of people there, Matterhorn bobsled, Star Tours, and that big Ferris wheel at California Adventure were all just down for maintenance. So I have to give them a little bit of crap for that. Now, this day we spent at Disneyland was actually my personal record for the longest I've spent in a park in one day. Being there from park open to after park close, I was in Disneyland for almost 17 hours. But because we had so much time there and we had lightning lanes, we were able to do just about everything we wanted. Now, from what I heard, Disneyland was sold out the day that I went there. And so it was crazy busy there. Like, it was really hard to walk around on these little pathways. But surprisingly, the lines for most things don't really get that long. I mean, it's kind of true with Magic Kingdom too, how like all these little dark rides usually sit at about 15 to 20 minute waits. The only thing that gets like an hour long wait is like Rise of the Resistance or Tiana's or Space Mountain, all of which we have at home, so I wasn't really missing out too much. This being the 70th birthday celebration meant that they had like a special parade, which we saw a little bit of. They also had like this Walt Disney animatronic presentation thing, which we actually snagged a virtual queue for, but when we saw the line to get in, it was stretching all the way down Main Street, and we basically couldn't even find the end of the line, so we were just like, we don't care that much. I mean, I definitely expected this going on the 70th birthday, but you could kind of tell that this whole day felt like a Disney fan competition. It seemed like everywhere you look, everyone was trying to show off that they're the biggest Disney fan. Where you got people who are like, oh, I came for the 60th birthday. And someone else is like, oh, I came for the 50th birthday. And someone else is like, oh, well, I've got the most complete pin collection. And for parts of it, I felt a little bit out of place because I'm like, I'm just here to experience Disneyland. But then later in the night, we did see the Disneyland fireworks show, which I was pleasantly surprised by because I know how close Disneyland is to everything around it, just like Universal in Orlando, where they do not have the clearance to do any large fireworks. But Disneyland shocked me with how big their fireworks were. So they must have found a good sweet spot of where they can set them off. But it was still not quite as big as Magic Kingdom. So now I'm going to break down the rides that are in both Disneyland and Disney World. Starting with Space Mountain, like I said, it's a very close race, but I might have to give it to the Disney World version. The Disneyland one is smoother. It actually feels a lot closer to Cosmic Rewind, but the layout feels like you're just going around in circles the whole time. Then there's the Buzz Lightyear shooting ride, which I'm pretty sure is basically the same. Then there's Autopia versus the Tomorrowland Speedway, which I'd say they're kind of both not that great. I wouldn't mind both of them just being removed. It's a Small World. You know, I had a lot of people telling me before I went there that, oh, Disneyland's It's a Small World is way better. And I mean, sure, I guess it's better. If one of them is a 2.5 out of 10, the other one's 2.75 out of 10. And then Runaway Railway is identical, but I guess the queue is better in Disneyland. Star Wars is all identical. I think Peter Pan is identical. Big Thunder Mountain. Now, I really wanted to get on Big Thunder Mountain. We had the Lightning Lane scheduled for the very last hour of the night, and it was just broken down. So, unfortunately, I missed it. But I have heard that the Disneyland one is better. But then Pirates of the Caribbean, no doubt, is much better at Disneyland. It feels like the Disney World one only gets the second half of the ride. It's really weird to me that they just kind of cut that ride in half when they put it at Magic Kingdom. But then the opposite is true of Haunted Mansion, where Magic Kingdom has the full experience and then Disneyland only has like the second half. Now here's an interesting comparison. Indiana Jones at Disneyland versus Dinosaur at Animal Kingdom. Because they use the same ride vehicles and Dinosaur is probably going to become Indiana Jones in the future. Honestly, I really like both of them. I can't really compare them. Indiana Jones is more of like an adventure ride, whereas Dinosaur is more like a horror ride. So I really wish we could just have both. And then you got Jungle Cruise, which they seem basically identical. I don't really like either one, to be honest. I even did Soarin' Around the World for whatever reason. And I mean, it's almost identical. I would say the Disney World one's a little bit better because if you're in the back row of the California Adventure one, you're kind of just seeing everyone's legs hanging in front of you. But something kind of funny I noticed in the whole resort is that you don't see 20-year-olds working in every shop here. Now, over in Disney World, because of the Disney College program, a huge portion of the employees around all of the parks and resorts are people straight out of high school. It's all about like 18 to 24-year-olds working in all the shops and all the food service places. But then over at Disneyland, it kind of shocked me a little bit to see like older people working in the shops. I've heard that Disneyland used to have a college program, but I guess they don't anymore. But also, a lot of the shops and restaurants felt way better themed. Like most of the shops in Disney World these days seems like they're all just very bland, basic, not a whole lot of theming going on. Whereas a lot of the Disneyland shops feel a lot more immersive. So I will give Disneyland the points for just having more charm. Now, in my very last video, I mentioned that I do not own any Disney merch because I never find anything I like, and I haven't really classified myself as a Disney adult yet. So you're probably wondering, did I buy any Disney merch while I was over at Disneyland? And let me just show you something real quick. I'm just kidding. I bought this at SeaWorld yesterday. No, I didn't buy anything at Disneyland. I tried. I really did. I was looking so hard to find some 70th anniversary merch, but I just could not find anything that was for me. It doesn't help that a lot of the stuff they sell there is long sleeve, which I'm never gonna wear in Florida. So during my time on this vacation, I will say that like the first half of the California Adventure day, I was kind of like not super impressed, but then towards the end of the day, I was starting to like it quite a bit more as the sun went down. And then over at Disneyland, the first half of the day, I'm just blown away with all of the stuff that's not in Magic Kingdom and liking Disneyland way more. But then towards the end of the day, I was kind of just like, all right, I'm kind of ready to go back to Disney World again. I mean, the Disneyland Resort is really solid for what it is. It almost feels like it's Disney World's greatest hits in a lot of ways, unlike Universal Hollywood, which feels like Universal Orlando's worst hits. But yeah, I have to give Disneyland a lot of credit, but obviously the quantity is just way less than what Disney World has. And not only that, but Disney World feels like it's much more of a destination place. You know, you've got all these fancy hotels everywhere. You've got all these buffets and special experiences going on all the time. Whereas Disneyland is much more of like, all right, you can spend 1 or 2 days here, but it kind of feels like it's just missing that grand scale feeling that Disney World has. So anyways, what do you guys think? Do you like Disneyland or Disney World better? I mean, I know I'm certainly not special for visiting the Disney parks on both coasts. I know people do it all the time. But how would you guys compare everything within the parks? Which side is better, for what reason? And if you're wondering why it took me so long to post this video when the birthday party was like 2 weeks ago, okay, get this. So I flew from Florida all the way over to California just to spend a couple days at Disney, and then I flew all the way back to Florida which then a couple days later I flew all the way over to Utah to visit some family for a few days, and then all the way back to Florida. So within 2 weeks, I did 4 cross-country flights. So it's been very busy and chaotic, and I'm just like trying to catch back up on life. And I'm really sick of airports at this point.